Pandit. I am an Access Consciousness Certified Facilitator, and on this show we explore different topics relating to life and living and creation of life and living, and explore them from some different points of view, some really unique ways of looking at things that I actually learn a lot as I study and expand my study of the tools of consciousness. So today's topic and what we're going to be talking about today is true living is motion, total motion. And a part of this conversation is going to be how we use wrongness to stagnate ourselves and our lives, and how that wrongness, in fact, is actually a gift. So, without any further ado, let's start exploring this new topic today. And I want to start by telling you guys where I got this whole thing and this conversation from is this amazing book called Living Beyond Distractions by Gary McDouglas, the amazing Gary. And this book is actually based on a telecall that he does called Distractor Implants. So in case you guys want to check that out, you can Google that up or find it on accessconsciousness.com. But today, there's a section, one of my most favorite parts about this book is this section where they explore what true motion is and how we use the positive and negative. Instead of going into the wrongness of positive and negative, what else is possible? So I'm going to just start reading a little bit and then we'll go from there. When you look at a molecule, you see positive and negative electrons around the center, which is the nucleus of the element. They are the source of what creates movement within the structure of the system of the molecule. So if you look at you as the nucleus of the molecule, and you're within the molecule of your own reality. So this is me, the nucleus of my molecule, and this molecule is what is my reality, my life, my living. So when you look at you as a nucleus of your molecule and you're within the molecule of your own reality, you would recognize that every time you go to wrongness, which is the negative element, that is the moment that you need to go to the strength of the positive element called change. So if I'm the nucleus of my reality, which is the molecule which is my reality, then there are two elements. One, the negative elements, you know how there are two elements in every molecule, positive and negative, and that movement between those elements is what creates the structure of that molecule. And together, the structure of molecules is what creates whatever it is that we're looking at. So if you're looking at the structure of our own reality, I'll take my example here and you take yours. If you are the nucleus and the molecule is your reality, then every time you go to wrongness, when you're making yourself wrong, making anybody else wrong, or going into what's right or wrong, anytime you're going into the energy of wrongness, that's the negative energy. And the positive energy within the structure of your own molecule of reality is the change. Okay, let's keep going. Wrongness is the negative element, change is the positive element, and so you create movement. Every molecule has motion, and you have to create the motion in your life, which becomes life, which then takes that motion as real living. So anytime, remember how I talked about, and this actually comes sometime later in this chapter, is this, by the way, is from the chapter called Life, Living, Death, and Reality, which in this entire book is, four different, this entire book, Living Beyond Distractions, is basically about this thing in Access that we call distractor implants, which is basically all these different things that we use to distract ourselves from what we truly want and desire, rather than just be living. And you know how in Matrix, if you've seen the movie The Matrix, how everybody's in the Matrix and nobody is anybody truly living, or are they just feeding on these autopilot systems that are running their lives in reality? And so when you become really present and start exploring your life and start exploring and asking different questions and being present, just the way nature is, you know, how nature is not in the head, there's no head in the nature. Nature is all about embodiment and being, and you know, the joy of presence and exuberance and ongoing motion and creation, and molecules are a part of the nature. So when basically we use wrongness, we make wrongness wrong, which is super meta, by the way. But also look at how much you judge yourself, for example, for judging yourself, or how much do you judge yourself for judging somebody else. And it's easy, it might be easier to actually find yourself with that, you know, that you see that, oh, I'm judging this person, or I'm having, you know, I'm being angry at this person, and then you start judging yourself. So it's kind of super meta, but essentially that's how everybody is living, including you and I a lot of times, right? And most of the times, until we start practicing being conscious and being present and aware and exploring a different possibility. So when you're in motion, you are living. And that wrongness or that negative element that a lot of times we resist and talk about it, like I find myself so many times in the day resisting this energy of wrongness, and a lot of times it's just the wrongness of me, and I'm just going 10 steps ahead of myself this time, but we're going to get to that too. But the idea is that true living is motion, total motion. It's not about thinking. It's not about stagnating yourself at any sense of wrongness. It's not about even, you know, finding out why you're feeling wrong, because that's also like a part of being stagnated on wrongness. But true living, as it is and as it exists in the nature, is all about motion. It's all about change. Everything is always ever changing. And anytime we create, anytime our life is not fun, or any part of our life stops being fun, if you're willing to be present with it and willing to ask yourself different questions and willing to be facilitated to greater consciousness, you're going to find that there are something like the true motion of change had somewhere stopped in that place for you. Somewhere you bought into some lies, some sense of wrongness, and instead of creating, which by the way, what living is, you know, it's an ongoing thing. It's an ing. It's not a completion. Like a lot of times when we look at life is a completion, but living is an ongoing energy. So true living is motion, it's change, it's how nature is. It's ever changing, ever evolving, never getting stuck on anything. Like, you know, if a leaf drops, or if I were to pluck a flower from a bush or a tree or a beautiful plant, the plant is not going to stop living and start mourning it. There's just this ongoing energy of creation. So somebody at a later point in this book, somebody asks Gary to expand on this whole thing about that wrongness is the negative element, change is the positive element, and that motion is real living. And so I'm going to read a little bit of that. Every electron, this is what Gary says, every electron moves and creates a motion, which is what functions as the element of the structure. It functions as the structure. Wait a second, I'm having a hard time reading this sentence. It functions as the structure of what is. It functions as a structure of what's actually possible in life. So every electron moves and creates motion, which is what functions as the element of the structure, right? So like take it back to the very, very core of a molecule, like, the nucleus and the positive, negative, and that motion between positive, negative is what creates the element of that structure, of that molecule. That's what shapes what it is. So as soon as you get that you're looking at the wrongness, if you will ask, what change is available here that I haven't anticipated? And take care of that, it's a different possibility, and a different possibility could occur. So change is essentially what is a generative and creative place to be in. And how much of our life is about that versus how much of our life is about settling in, about finding an answer, about, getting it right so that you can then settle in and have it be the way it is. You are never going to have it be the way it is, ever. When you stop creating something, when you stop being present with and asking questions around what else is possible, what change is available here, that is what starts to stagnate your life and living. So I'm going to go forward with this next part here, which is you change. So Dane in this conversation is talking about how he brought this up, that change is the generative and creative place to be, in a recent class. And what he found was that people, they received so much change from the day one of that class. And then the second day when people came back, they were solid as rock. And he says that because they had so much change, which was the polarity of the positive side, people came into day two solid as rock. But then they had to create, because they had created so much change, but then they had to create that much wrongness to balance it out, which is why you keep going from change to wrongness. So anytime you notice change in our world is wrongness, like how many times have you ever had like people come and tell you, hey, you've changed? And do they mean it as a compliment, even though you can choose to receive it as one? But how much of change is considered a wrongness in the general reality that is around us? Are we encouraged to change? Or are we encouraged to be right, good, perfect, and correct, and then be that? And how much in being that are you stagnating yourself? You change and then you go to, I'm wrong, rather than asking what change is actually available here. This question is what takes you out of, and literally is the antidote of wrongness. Ask what change is available here. And know that when you feel the most wrong is when the most change is available. And this sentence right here in this book, I don't know how many times I've read this entire section, but this sentence right here in this book, that when you're feeling your most wrong is when the most amount of change is available, has been a lifesaver for me. I mean, it's something I have to remind myself of so many times, because I don't know about you, like I would actually encourage you to explore this for yourself. What I find myself, anytime I change a lot, suddenly I'm like, everything feels like, I don't feel very good, and I just start feeling wrong. And so anytime you're feeling wrong, first of all, one of the questions you could ask yourself and look at the energy of it is that, have I changed? And is this change different, showing up different than what I would imagine? Is this actually change? And if the energy starts to expand in your world when you ask that question, that's how you're, tapping into the energy. And that's the awareness that a question brings up for you, that, oh yeah, I've changed. Something's changed. And so now what? If you're like, imagine we've been brought up to think that we have to become something and then be that and then maintain that and then try to maybe grow that a little bit as we go forward. But nothing in the nature does maintenance. Nothing. Nothing in the nature is trying to be or is hoping to achieve or is trying to find the rightness of itself or trying to get it right or hustle or all of those things that a lot of what we're taught growing up in this world. And so the question becomes, if none of this is what's there in the nature, then what am I being here? And what is my reality? If the nature of me is constant change and evolution, then where am I stopping myself from that? And where am I trying to create stagnancy or stability in my life where I could be thriving in change? And you will notice that people who actually thrive, this is one of the elements that they've embraced in their lives: change. They're not looking at things to be the same. Like even people who are like let's say someone who's an investor or who's super rich, like Warren Buffett, for example, right? Like everyone knows, and if you don't already, he's a world famous investor, and he has built an enormous wealth just by his presence and using his awareness and just being different. And a lot of time, what comes with that change, do you think 100% of the times Warren Buffett invested in something, it worked? Or it worked exactly as he thought it would? And yet, how much are we taught to judge and conclude to not take that kind of risk, to really just be the opposite of what nature is and what our nature is? And so how much of what you're being is actually an entrainment that doesn't really work. And so anytime you feel the most wrong is actually when the most amount of change is available for you. So instead of going into the stagnancy or start creating or rather uncreating or rather devolving, instead of evolving, we start devolving ourselves any time that we stop changing. And change is a wrongness in this reality. You're not supposed to change. You're supposed to remain the same so that everybody else can connect with you at the same level. Because imagine if you're changing all the time, then people will judge you more because then they're not comfortable around you because, now you're stirring their reality. But the question becomes that what is important to you and what makes your life worth living? Is it making people around you comfortable? And hey, trust me, like I'm a people pleaser big time. I've spent most of my life making everybody around me comfortable. And this is actually something very recent for me too, to start, and hence this show, Conscious Being, Conscious Living, the exploration, because it's an exploration I'm having in my own life to look at, dude, this is not working. I am miserable anytime I'm not being me, and anytime I'm not being, period. And anytime that I'm trying to be something for someone, or anytime I'm trying to make people feel comfortable, I'm not being me. And then I go into the wrongness of me if I actually was to be me, that ever changing dynamic of nature and molecules of existence that I am, this huge sensate body full of molecules of consciousness. If I start living as nature and always in question, never stopping at anything, never making anything significant, always present, always contributing to everything and everyone without any judgment, and just living and just being and just creating and not judging myself, just being, then guess what? I will likely be judged. I will likely be made wrong. And everyone who is making me wrong Do they even matter? Does it even matter? Are they even truly caring for you? And are you willing to then, be wrong? Because you will be wrong when you change from everybody else's point of view. And are you willing to not make that wrongness a stagnation or buy it as real or true and just keep changing rather than have that wrongness be a reason that you stop? So I'm going to go forward and read some more here. Gary says, yes, what change is actually available that I haven't chosen. And then Dane says that I just got a glimpse of something completely different. It is never about getting stuck only in the positive and avoiding the negative. It's about creating motion. Gosh, I have like chills as I'm even reading this, because how many times have me, Ava, right here, how many times have I gone into, like, I get into the wrongness of something, and then instead of, because remember, in the molecule of your reality, wrongness is the negative element and change is the positive element. So how many times have I gone into the wrongness and made it so real and stagnated myself from over that wrongness, and really spent, how many hours in the days have I spent in my life just making that wrongness real? The wrongness of me, the wrongness that I perceive other people project at me when I'm being me, how many times have I made that real, rather than asking that, okay, wrongness is the negative element, okay, and change is the positive element. And in order to create my life and living, and in order to create true motion in my life and living, what change train can I hop on now? Like, what change is available now? If I wasn't making this wrongness real, then what else is possible? What change do I have available? And so this thing that it's never about getting stuck in only the positive. And that's what I used to be a very spiritual person until like about a decade ago, when I started finding different way of being and stuff. And a lot of spirituality is about positive thinking and creating a positive life and, all of that. But that's what the problem with this is, that it's never about getting stuck only in the positive and avoiding the negative. It's about using the negative and almost like catapulting yourself with that negative to find what change, what next. And so how much do you slow yourself down? And how much do you slow your creations down? And when I say creation, your relationships are creation. Your business is a creation. Your life is a creation. Your body is a creation. So how much do you slow yourself down, and you slow down your creations by buying into wrongness as real and true? And so my exploration this week, guys, is going to be this. It's going to be just to look at that, where am I creating stagnation in my life by using wrongness as real and true, by making wrongness as real and true, rather than being the positive element of change and asking a different question. And I am just going to finish up by reading this last section around this. So Gary says, in truth, your whole reality is in a constant state of motion. When you look out in the nature, you see that nothing ever remains the same. It's never totally silent, never totally still. If you go for a walk and you look closely, you will see thousands of bugs and things moving and all kinds of stuff happening. That is the different. Why is it different? Because it is always in a constant state of motion. There is no such thing as body as rest There is no such thing in the universe. If we look at the molecular structure of anything, we see that the positive and negative structures are in a constant state of motion. Otherwise, that thing doesn't exist in the same form. It could catalyze at something else and change its form, but it can never maintain its form without the electrical motion of the positive and negative electrons. There always has to be motion in everything. So, my friend, this week, I would like to invite you to explore this more for yourself and look at how this really works for you, how positive this whole thing about the wrongness being the negative element and the change being positive element, and you actually start moving towards that positive element of change anytime you stop buying into the negative element of wrongness as real or true, and stop slowing yourself down with that and stagnate your life with that, and instead ask a question that creates a different possibility, a greater possibility that opens up your space. So, wrongness is the negative element, change is the positive element, and it's in the motion between the two that you create your life and living. So I wonder what change is available for you this week, and I wonder where have you been stagnating your life and your living based on some sense of wrongness that you've bought as real and true, and what else is possible beyond it? What change awaits you, and what true motion of life and living is possible for you? All right, I would love for you to play with this and tell me how it goes as we meet again next week. And next week I might actually be a day later, so we're going for a trip to Yellowstone National Park, which I'm so excited about, and we're going to be back, well, since it's a road trip, we're not sure if we're going to be back on Tuesday or Wednesday, but I'll post in here when the next show is going to be. I would love to have you join me live, and let's explore what true life, true living, true motion is, and what else is possible with this beautiful thing called life that we chose as an infinite being. All right, I'll see you again next week. Have a wonderful one.